Today's episode is brought to you by Hover. Please visit hover.com/wizard to get 10% off your domain name registrations.
I'm Broadcast Jonesin for some podcasting.
I'm going to go turn off your mic. Hold on.
Games, video 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 games.
It's January 16th, 2013, and this is the last Dateline.
This is Idle Thumbs 90. I'm Chris Remo.
I'm Jake Rodkin.
I'm Sean Vanneman.
And I'm Nick Breckon.
Welcome, Nick.
Hi, Nick.
Thanks. Hey.
Hey, man.
How's it going?
Not
It's
bad.
like you never left.
Yeah. Except I did.
You son of a bitch.
Yeah. I'd like to thank all of the fans for their kind words and support over the years.
Their kind word.
Well, what's weird is that there's,
Specifically word, yeah.
there's a not insignificant number of readers listening to this who probably didn't listen to Idle Thumbs when Nick was on it.
They have no idea who I am.
Nick Breckon works for Bethesda and was one of the original
Fill them
three.
in. I could be anybody right
It'll
now.
take me
Why are you
10
telling them
seconds.
that?
Nick
Whatever.
Breckon is the President of the United States.
Thank you.
End of space.
The first episode of Idle Thumbs, the podcast, was Jake and Nick and I. And
That was back when we were called Idle
we did
Thumbs,
that
the
for about a year
podcast.
before
Yeah.
Nick deserted us.
Yes. Whoa. Didn't take long to just flip the switch.
Nope, that
Yep.
switch has been flipped.
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right. Well, yeah.
That's it. That's all the
That's
introduction
the history.
deserves.
That's the grand history of
So
that.
do we want to talk about the room from which we escaped
Yes,
last
we
night?
do.
Or,
No,
no, excuse me,
we
which we
did not
failed
escape.
to
Yeah.
escape from which we failed to escape?
We did a really cool thing last night. A reader. We should have figured out which reader it was who recommended this. But
One lucky reader.
yeah, one of our readers pointed out what's called Real Escape Game, which is a Japanese company, I guess, that has been operating like real world room escape puzzles in Japan for a long time, and they brought it to San Francisco like maybe a year ago or something, or within the last few years. And it's like one of those online room escape games where you're just stuck in a room and you're just solving puzzles till you get out, but you're physically there with 10 other people in an actual locked room. And there's just a series of crazy puzzles that range from just hidden objects to like sort of light cryptography, to kind of weird logic puzzles with crosswords and stuff.
Just even riddles and stuff.
Yeah, riddles. Yeah.
Well, things are just hidden.
Yeah.
Also,
Like
there's
this-
things like flipping over the couch and
Yeah.
putting it in the back of the room, pulling the carpet back, and finding a hidden compartment in the floor that,
Yeah.
like, it was
Yeah, there's just every category. I mean, the cool thing about it is that it's like every category of puzzle, and they're all interlinked, and some of them are kind of repeat back on themselves.
The thing that
pretty
was
cool.
awesome was experiencing, because the room is so dense full of stuff and so many things to discover, you guys had discoveries that I didn't know about. like the
you
fact
had-
that
well,
you guys
yeah.
found that compartment and underneath the rug.
yeah.
Yeah, or
No
like,
idea that ever happened until
one of the craziest moments for me was when all of a sudden the lights turned off in the room.
Oh my God.
yeah,
It was
I
amazing.
did- I walked
this is
over to
such
the-
a-
And Chris, you
I
did
was
it
like-
so dramatically too. I saw you out of the corner of my eye. You just sort of went over, bloop, and then everybody was like, "What?"
That's because I thought it was like a
part of the
narrative
game.
event or
Yeah,
something.
yeah, I did too. I was
Everyone
like, oh,
freaked out
the
and looked,
spirit
and then
turned out
looked
the
over
light.
at the wall, and
Yeah.
two letters were glowing.
Four letters.
Or
Four
four letters were
letters,
glowing
yeah.
in the wall that,
Yeah.
that said the word food?
Foot.
Foot. Well, foot is equally hilarious, but
Yeah.
God,
You were
That was amazing.
the look on your face.
Yeah,
when
you were
turned
just
the
like,
lights
yeah, I
back
did
on.
that.
No,
You had this look
the
of
reason
just
I
like-
had that look, no, that wasn't it at all. Because I went over there and I was, because so the very first thing we did was you looked up tomorrow in the dictionary, but then the very second thing I did immediately was find a chest.
we should
with
also
four-
we should try not to go crazy with clues in this in case people who live in Northern California.
God.
Oh, you know what? Let's just say
Want
if
to
you
run
want to
this
go
game.
do this game,
Yeah.
right now we're gonna talk about it.
Yeah,
So
it's running for a little while longer in San Francisco, so most readers probably won't. But for those
it's
who
in
do,
Japantown. It's near the Kabuki.
yeah, you
Theater.
probably want to just skip a little bit of the podcast because we're going to spoil a escape from the room game that only exists in one room in a building in Japantown.
Yeah.
So spoilers.
And so the first thing I did was find a chest that had that was completely
was
sealed
bolted shut.
It was
Yeah.
bolted shut with 4 different kinds of screw, like with screws that had 4 different kinds of heads. So
was
there's
like Phillips head flat.
flathead, and then 2 sizes of Allen wrench. And that was the very first thing I found. And then that was, and then people would like end up finding, like when Nick found the panel under the floor, that had one of the screwdrivers in it, right?
Yeah, it had an Allen wrench.
Yeah, someone eventually
Right, and-
tore couch cushions apart, and inside one of the zipper pouches of a couch cushion was another
Yeah.
piece of a screwdriver.
Right. And other people had already searched the sofa and not found anything. So I was like,
Yeah, I turned it inside out and found a piece of paper about the signs of the zodiac, but I didn't go far enough to turn the couch cushions themselves inside out.
And there's a lot of moments like that. And so because of that, my brain went into this like mode of don't have like, there's always going to be something underneath the other thing. Like, don't ever assume you've searched. Like, and so I didn't even originally intend to turn the lights off. I went over there because I'm like, I wonder if I can take the panel off of the light switch. That's what a weird space my brain was in. It wasn't, I'm going to try turning the lights off. It was like, I'm going to try manipulating this light switch in some weird way. And then I accidentally turned it off. And then the look on my face wasn't like being deliberately enigmatic. It was just being surprised for a second. I'm like, wait, what? And everyone else noticed the glowing things before I did. Oh. And everyone started going, whoa, whoa. And I was like, and I thought they were just, why
are the lights off?
The lights were off. Yeah. So I was Mr. Magooing my way through that puzzle.
Yeah.
But it was super fun. We didn't escape. Out of the 50, we were the 53rd team.
52nd, but whatever.
52nd.
Yeah,
we were the 52nd team to play this game. We did not escape. Only 3 teams.
3 out of 52 people have
ever
escaped.
Mm-hmm.
We got close, but I feel like we probably needed it. It was
We
an
would have needed another
hour-long
20 minutes.
game. Like every 10 minutes, the loudspeaker would say how many minutes had elapsed, I think, or how many minutes remained.
Yeah.
And yeah, we probably needed 10 to 15 more minutes, but we got through the locked door into the final room where it was a bunch of creepy stuff. Everyone on our team was so excited though when we got into that room. We're like, "Oh my god, hang the sheet up! It matches up with the thing!" Like,
there were
whoa.
also only like 7 minutes left when we got in, so there was a heightened atmosphere. To
Well, they
begin
actually
with.
play.
They start playing
TikTok
creepy music.
Yeah.
Yeah. So everyone had that sort of adrenaline going, and then the room is just intense when you get in there.
Yeah.
So it made everything all the crazier.
God.
It's nice because at that stage, around like the 9-minute mark, we had a really good flow of
Yeah,
a
we
lot
really
of
did.
solutions coming together. It was like boom, boom, boom,
Yep.
and this and this and this. That was worth admission. That like weird little solving high that we got right then. Oh, so
Also,
good.
the next game that these guys are doing is set on board a pirate ship in the San
Yep.
Francisco Bay, and it's called Escape from the Haunted Ship.
Yep.
That is happening.
Yeah, we're
like,
going
that
to
is
that.
guaranteed
Doing it.
to happen.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I hope that this
It
is
looks
a thing
like they have a whole series of these. That like this is that one on the pamphlet. It was like Real Room Escape 4. Like I guess they just they set these up. Just they have new ones.
And
on
I know,
a
like,
basis.
did Chris? You did the Jejune Institute stuff in San
yeah,
Francisco. Did
that
anyone
stuff
else
was
here
great.
do that?
We've talked about that on the podcast.
Yeah, that's it was a sort of mystery game solved across the city, and I know like doesn't New York have something that's what is the I don't know.
Oh, they have that hotel
Yeah, I
that
don't know.
Adam went to. No, that's theater though. I don't think it's
Yeah.
Oh, you're talking about Sleep No More.
Yeah.
That's different.
That's a different
Adam
thing.
went to sleep no more. He said it was
But
great.
these like real world collaborative puzzle games are I've now played 2 of them in San Francisco, and they're really goddamn fun.
It's really
it's a
fun.
thing that I would like to see show up in more places, and who knows if it ever will, because it requires either a weird group of people like whoever the hell did the Jejune Institute, which seemed like it was just
That was all. Well, we did it with all people we know. Oh, you mean
I mean, who put it on? Because there's no,
right.
you don't pay money to go to the Jejune Institute. You just
Yeah,
walked
you
into
just
that
go in.
weird.
I don't know how they afforded that.
That was a crazy thing where you went up to
An actual
a floor of a building in
like
the financial
15th
district.
floor of a financial district skyscraper.
And there's just a man there at the front desk saying, welcome to the Jejune Institute. Go to this room for your indoctrination or whatever.
orientation.
Yeah. It was orientation, which then turned
Yeah.
into faux indoctrination. But
Yeah.
that was just like, that felt like the beginning of the game, but on a far lower budget. Whereas this clearly was a,
it's a puzzle.
it's paying money for this experience, but it was,
There's not a lot of. I mean, that's one thing we were talking about. There's not a lot of sort of narrative artifice over it. Like you're
No.
doing crossword puzzles
That's-
and you're
right.
things like
That's
that.
also genuine too, just like that style of puzzle game, which I think.
I mean,
Yeah.
the Jejune one that was all about narrative. The Jejune one is more narrative and less puzzle solving. It's more of just a scavenger hunter, like a connect the dots.
Yep.
And it's in service of sort of uncovering this narrative, and then also in service of just exploring your city in an interesting way. Whereas this was like any moment that there was that they could have potentially taken more of a narrative tack or more of a puzzle tack, like the puzzle always wins.
Yeah.
Like in this,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
all about puzzles.
You kind of compared it yesterday to the Professor Layton. We were talking
Yeah,
at
it
dinner. I thought
felt
that was
there's
really
like a particular there's a particular brand, and it's totally makes sense to me that this is a Japanese thing, because if you look at a lot of Japanese puzzle games, I would say even Resident Evil 4 or something is like this. You know, games that have really strong tonal elements in a lot of cases, but
it's
are
absolutely
willing
it's,
to
it's
just
not afraid at all to just dump a puzzle in your
right,
face.
to just completely go off the narrative rails and just be like, here's this arbitrary puzzle that you're going to solve for some reason. Whereas in like Western adventure games, a Western adventure game tends to, within like the first few minutes of the game, you can tell what kind of adventure. It's either going to be the Myst kind, where it is all puzzle oriented, or it's going to be like the LucasArts or Sierra kind, where it's narrative with kind of goofy puzzles stringing everything along. But it's going to be that for the whole time, you know. Whereas I feel like Japanese puzzle or adventure game design tends to
Well, it's funny, like
be more willing to just suddenly like be a different game.
was when Sean and I were
bit.
working on Puzzle Agent at Telltale, which is a very Professor Layton inspired
Yeah.
game. The first thing we said is ground rules. There's never going to be a time when you look inside of a keyhole, lock in a door, and find a slider puzzle. Like that is never allowed.
for
to
what it's
happen.
worth, we ended up making that game where you found slider puzzles inside of locks.
It was never
the
literally that
intent
though.
was
There's
that.
always an attempt at least to try and say this is a thing that exists inside a person's brain. It never.
Oh well, that's the thing. Yeah, the
There
puzzle,
was always at least a conceit. I'm not saying it was good.
I think we hedged on that pretty good. I don't know.
That's
man.
fine.
But our hearts are in the right place, I think, and I like games that are more like that.
I mean-
Just from maybe it's probably Western design sensibility, but I do. Had we made that game, I would have been happy. That's what we wanted to do.
Well, you, like when the guy asked for feedback at the end, Sean, that was your feedback was, I wish there was more of a narrative thread that kind of grounded this thing, or that there was at least more of a
or
premise.
none.
Yeah, no, I
Because,
agree. I agree. with
yeah,
you.
it was-
because
it
the
did
most
sort of-
jarring moment was,
yeah.
I mean, it was crazy and like high tension for the reason I said earlier. But when we did get into the second room, it was really jarring that suddenly there's like blood scrawled on the walls to form words and like a weird doll and like all this stuff.
It was the exact
suddenly,
moment where we didn't want to be confused by anything narrative. Like it was like, Jesus, we got like 5 minutes.
Yeah, but-
Lewis, like what? Who's Lewis? I don't care about this guy. Just, I want to get into the
But that would have been less the case probably had there been a narrative thread we'd been following the whole
sure,
time.
yeah.
Right.
That
Yeah, it
would have
was
been
the-
super
Like
exciting.
I didn't.
that at that point,
yeah,
to
it was the
uncover, like,
It
disconnect.
felt like
that
you knew who
felt-
that guy was.
Yeah.
yeah.
And like even the crossword was like the crossword puzzle that we solved, which by the way, I was so happy to get to solve a crossword in a situation where like 10 other people
Yeah,
were
that was
benefiting
your
from it.
moment.
Like,
Yeah,
That was-
shining
it was
moment.
they like fucking solved the New York Times
music just
crossword
went,
every day for the last 3 years. Like, yes.
I trained for this.
But like the crossword was just printed on official like real room escape like letterhead paper, not letterhead paper.
Yeah,
but, like,
it just
had the
said
logo
escape
of it
from the
on it.
mysterious
Like,
room crossword.
Yeah, like there was no attempt to
But, like,
make that a physical artifact of the world.
That is exactly
that-
like if this was the Professor Layton game and the puzzle popped up, it would just say Professor Layton on the top
No, I
screen of
know,
your DS
exactly,
in
yeah.
the middle of solving this
Yeah,
puzzle.
right. That's
Yeah.
why that was the thing that made
Yeah.
me connect it to that kind of brand of Japanese game. And it was I agree it would have been cool if that was actually just an artifact of the
But
world.
at
you
the
know,
same
and was
time,
less-
holy crap, just being able to live inside of that space as a real person with
oh no,
other
for
people
sure, it was amazing.
like
I would recommend it to
completely
anybody.
unique. It's yeah.
And if you can muster 9 other friends to do it,
10 other friends.
it's
There's
11.
11 people.
Oh, yeah. If you can get in a group of 11, I would say book a whole one with 11
Yeah.
people because you'll probably succeed.
you
I think
live-
it's tough because the first 30 minutes of it are just, okay, which one of these people knows what the fuck they're doing? You know, like
It's
who?
really fascinating to see that kind of shake out.
Yeah.
The answer is not all of us. Also, let's just.
yeah.
I feel
Yeah.
like we each had at least one moment where we
Oh yeah, for sure.
contributed something
But there
pretty
were like
significant.
leafing through that comic book. Like both Nick and I,
that
both Nick
comic
and I
book was-
leafed through that book.
You guys got to
was our
tell that because
demise.
that's incredible.
Yeah, so
I didn't understand that.
there-
I didn't know what had happened until after.
There were a few books in the room. There was a dictionary, there was a comic book, and there was like a mystery thriller that was by someone named Archer, which ended up being relevant to the Signs of the Zodiac thing. But the manga comic book everyone looked through it, like, I think trying to find like a circled, like I was looking through for like something circled in red ink or for a page that was torn out or for a piece of paper that was going to fall out.
Something written in it.
And I think Nick also looked through it for the same thing. But
I looked through it at least 2 times.
But then
probably
someone
3.
else.
Yeah, it was a girl. I was standing next to a girl, and
She found a tiny dog-eared page.
Patrice?
Yeah. There was a tiny dog-eared page.
That's awesome because she was really like reserved the whole time, and like that's awesome. That I love that she had like the moment where she figured out the thing that guaranteed none of the rest of us would have.
Yeah, no, that we would have never
ever.
gotten out of the room.
Yeah.
Because she said, "What do you think this is?" and hands me the manga. And I was like, "Okay, I'm just gonna read." First off, I read all the bubbles. I'm looking at the bubbles. I'm like, "Oh, there's nothing circled. These dialogues don't really make any sense." And then I looked at the actual pictures, and it was about a guy finding a secret journal in a drawer in a secret compartment that you had to open with like the tip of a ballpoint pen. And I was like, "What the
wedged into the bottom of the drawer?"
You need to contextualize this by saying this was like one page out of like a 200.
Yeah, it was like
manga. It wasn't like a one sheet that had this on it.
This was imagine just a manga off the shelf, 200
like
pages,
a whole book,
the whole book, in a dog-eared corner of about a 1/4 inch.
Yeah,
that was it.
Like
So
multiple people looked through this and never noticed that at all.
And it was awesome because you saw the characters in the manga like feeling underneath, like they pulled a drawer out of a desk, fell underneath the drawer and found a tiny pinhole. And then the other guy turns to the guy and goes, "You could use something thin and small, like the inside of a pen, to just put it into that hole and see what happens." And I was like, "Oh my God, are there any drawers in here that we haven't looked in?"
And then
so everybody just started feeling.
That was the most outrageous thing to me because I was standing over by the drawer that ended up, and out of nowhere you were just like, "Do any of the drawers in here have a small hole that you can feel it?" I was like, "What on?"
And I was like, as I'm saying, I was like ripping a big pen apart, come bounding over and boop and popped
And it immediately like.
That's what cracked the puzzle too, because that's where we found the decoder. Like we had all these other word clues, we had no idea what they were for, and then we got the cipher that they all lined up in.
Yeah.
Oh God, that was when it was like 10 minutes left. God damn it! Like that was the best.
Which brought us to a word, which finally you and I went right back to the dictionary.
That was the word that we like
Waterloo.
We'd been looking up every word that we came across in the dictionary, and there was no point. But then the word that was in the middle of this cipher was Waterloo, which took place in 1815, which was the 4-digit combo for the lock we've been trying to get into the entire time, which then opened up a goddamn room that had another locked
you can
door.
Be a boss and immediately just open the door.
Don't go do that, actually. Basically, because it's $30.
This is exactly what I was searching for before we started the game.
It's so funny.
Nick, this asshole.
I wasn't doing it. I wasn't actually going to read anything. I was just curious if anybody put like a fac, like like a walkthrough.
But the thing is, it's a $30 experience. It's worth it. But like, if you were to go with any knowledge, and you would just basically be robbing people.
It's not fun.
$30.
Go to the
It'd be
pirate
really
ship one. But this, because of the structure of this game, it's very much like the first Myst in that regard, where you spend that entire game trying to find the number of the. Or no, you're just trying to find the. Is it? I think it is just like the number of a page.
You just need to know the page so you know the pattern to put in the elevator.
Yeah, if you know the right page number, you can beat Myst in like 4 screens.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't remember the page number. Someone does.
Right. So yeah, that was really cool. It was fun.
Yeah.
Yep.
Speaking of Myst, we were playing Miasmata yesterday.
Oh my God.
Oh,
Thank you to the many readers who have been badgering us for months to play this game, because we finally all have now, or at least have all witnessed it being played.
Yeah.
Well, basically, we went from being trapped in a room to Japanese food to, you guys want to go to a bar? Why don't we just go sit around a computer and play Miasmata and drink?
Correct.
Like
choice.
old dorks.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, it was really fun.
Well, Chris and Nick had been playing it earlier.
Yeah.
You've been playing it
Nick and I-
the other day.
Yeah. Well, and I had loaded it up a week ago and played it for a while by myself and been like, oh, this is cool. I can see, where this is going. Like, this is really awesome. But I didn't really put in the time enough to get sucked into it. And then yesterday, when Nick and I, or 2 days ago, I guess, when Nick and I loaded it up, that playthrough was like transcendent for me. Like, it was amazing.
Well, it was disaster.
It was total disaster.
That's why it was transcendent.
Disaster.
It was amazing.
And the thing that is really interesting to me about this game is that it's so unforgiving and sort of so grounded in actual processes that you have to kind of internalize and almost get better at.
Yeah.
That it was actually really valuable. I thought in both instances to be playing it with multiple people present.
Totally.
Just having input. It was like playing an adventure game in that respect, except that it's not deterministic. Like in an adventure game, it's fun to play because you're all shouting out like just ideas to figure out what the one solution is. In this, it was like,
well, there's just all those like very specific small concepts or places that you found things, or like what are you? Or is that not what you're thinking?
I mean, the first time when Nick and I were playing it together, neither of us knew anything about what to do.
There's just a lot to take in and remember. That's very specific rule wise.
And so it's for those who don't know what Miasmata is. It's a first person game that pretty incredibly was made in its entirety from the engine up by two brothers over the course of 4 years.
The brothers Miasmata.
They have the most generic names ever, Joe and Bob Johnson. Yeah. It's really hard to Google these guys. Yeah. As Nick and I determined.
Yeah.
There are infinite numbers of each of those names on Moby Games, and almost none of them are none of them except for two are those guys.
There are a lot of red herrings.
You wake up on this island, video game, and you are afflicted with a plague to which you must find the cure. And you're able to synthesize plants and fungus that you find in the world into different medicines.
Using like lab table equipment.
Yeah. Taking advantage of, these lab stations that are set up throughout the world by this enclave of enlightened men or whatever they called them, who that was their whole goal on this island, was to find this cure. But like immediately within the first few minutes of the game, you find presumably one of those guys who's murdered with a knife in his back, and like it's obvious that they didn't.
Something went bad.
Went really wrong. And that's not a spoiler because it happens immediately. And the game has the whole game is just about figuring things out. Like there's that, which is all synthesizing medicine, but then the part that I really latched onto when Nick and I were playing was map triangulation. The way that you
the best thing.
It's incredible.
If you like the in-world map in Far Cry 2, you will go fucking and if you love like exploring spaces like a Minecraft server or something, those two things,
totally.
Combining those two
really
things
comparison.
Is because it has the in-world map that pops up like Far Cry 2, but then you explore spaces that you haven't yet mapped to find landmarks, and then you triangulate them relative to previous landmarks that you have found, and then your guy is able to
just pencil in the rest of the map,
scale the parts of the map that you've since traversed or that lie in between those points. So, starting off with that tiny dot like the size of a dime on this huge piece of paper and just knowing how much more world is left.
It's cool.
Just
like
crazy.
There are multiple ways to expand your map, one of which is to find just drawn
you also find other people's map that you can copy.
So that's how you get started.
Yeah.
Is by finding just a fragment of a map that just you get that for free basically. And then you can only it keeps you honest because you can only triangulate from a landmark if you actually have that landmark on your map. Otherwise, you don't know where to start the line, the angle from, which is really cool. Like that's legit.
So you have to keep building out relative to your start point.
Yeah, but the thing you can do that I think is really fascinating that Nick and I sort of hit upon was obviously to triangulate, you need multiple landmarks because you need to be able to draw an intersection between two vectors. But even if you only have one in your sights and you don't know where you are, because unless you're using a particular piece of medicine that gives you this ability, like most of the time when you're playing, if you open up your map, like you don't know where you are on the map. It's like a real map. It's just a map. But if you do see a landmark that you know the location of because you've mapped that landmark already, you can draw an angle from that based on like you have a compass, like based on the nothing but a single vector and a landmark. And then I must be somewhere along this vector on the map, and you don't know where, but you can say everything on this vector is southwest of where I'm trying to go. I guess I need to go northeast somewhere. And like the ability of the game systems to allow you to engage in that kind of actual spatial reasoning, I think is amazing. And you have to really internalize that attitude to navigating the world.
The end result of all of that is that you are basically just terrified of leaving your little base for like an obscene period of time. And the great thing about it too is that the mechanics, like we haven't talked about the movement, but the way the way the movement works in this game is phenomenal. Like it's momentum based. And there's like a lot of
by momentum based, you mean like when you're walking up a hill, your guy actually slows down because you have to trudge up a hill.
It takes bigger footsteps.
It takes bigger footsteps, heavier steps. When you're going down a hill, you sort of start getting like the
skittish,
like the skiddy pattering, or your guy will actually start sliding.
Yeah.
And if you go down too extreme of a hill, you'll lose control, and he actually tumbles over, and you get dizzy.
Yeah, so you're just sort of gingerly picking your way around the like periphery of your camp, kind of trying to figure out what to do. I'm picking up plants and
like you can sort of sprint and quickly scale up a really quick hill the way that you could in real life.
Yeah.
But like,
and then you fall down a cliff and get a fever. And you're just
the thing that, and so the movement, like you could, a lot of parts of this game are obviously not designed with ideal smooth playability in mind, right? Like that's not a goal of this game in any way, shape, or form. And so you could imagine a version of this game in which the movement system is actually just irritating because it's slightly debilitating. Like it keeps you from being able to do what you can in most video games.
There are people who will find this game incredibly irritating because it's slightly debilitating.
No, absolutely, yeah. Like in most video games, you can just run up a hill and it's fine. Like it makes no difference. In fact, Jake, as you pointed out yesterday, in a lot of video games, you actually run up hills faster than you run across a flat plane because all you're doing is getting X.
It's only covering
X
distance
speed.
relative to the flat ground, even
so
though you guys
you're
climbing.
getting height for free. You're getting like the hypotenuse for free. But in this game, the combination of the movement mechanics that actually take terrain and angle into like terrain and incline into account, combined with the fact that you really do need to be careful about how far afield you get because the map isn't just going to do all that location work for you. That means when I was playing the game, I really, really, really wanted to stay on the path as often as I could.
Yeah.
Like I had to really have a good reason to leave the path. And that's fascinating because that's something that is true of being in the wilderness for real. Like even if you're just on a nature trail that's really well documented, like even though as humans with like shoes and, in a bright daytime, like we're perfectly capable of just walking through the brush and almost certainly nothing's bad's gonna happen. But you don't. You stick to the trail because it's just that much more secure and understood most of the time.
Even when you're out, like I used to do, like backpack in the Sierras, you'd make the notion of going cross country is a very conscious choice, and it sucks.
Yeah. And I like that this game through its systems and not through any kind of like invisible wall or zone system or anything, just naturally made me trepidatious of straying too far off the path. I think
your
that's
fear
really
of it
cool.
was ingrained to the point that when Sean kept walking off the trail, like, stay on the trail. Trust me, stay on the trail.
That was a little
Sean's playthrough was very different.
That was a little different.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Sean was very methodical at first.
And then I got too big for my britches.
Yeah.
Well, I did too.
But
That's exactly what happened to me.
I stayed.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
What happened was, and it's exactly what would happen to me in real life, which was I was really methodic and sort of turtled my way forward, felt really good about the game. I was like, this game's easy. And then just move forward, get a little bit more on the map, move forward, get a little bit more on the map. And then I saw a landmark that enticed me.
Was it that sort of Aztec-looking ruin?
No, it was that. No, not yet. Okay. The first one was the head that was on the island.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So I was like, I'll just follow. Like I can't get lost if I follow the coastline. I'll just follow the coastline and then I'll get out to the head. No problem. It'd take longer, but I knew I couldn't get lost if I followed the coastline. So I did that. And then I couldn't get all the way out to that head. So I went, bummer. And then I kind of looked back over to my right and went, there's something interesting over there. And went up a hill and then came up over a rise. And there were these like Aztec ruins that didn't have paths but had stairs like you would imagine. Like there was structure.
Like a ziggurat.
Yeah. And I was instantly enticed by this structure. So I proceeded to get lost within the structure. Didn't know how to get back to the coast, or I was off the map and didn't know how to get anywhere. And then the sun went down, and I went, "Fuck!" Which is exactly
the sun going down in this game is terrifying.
Which is exactly what would happen to me in real life. That's I would be like, "Oh, this place is like." I would just sort of have a methodical plan that I knew it was safe. Right. Look over my right shoulder and be like, "Well, what the fuck is that?"
Get enticed.
And then get enticed. It's like I got lost in Cedar Point, which is a like roller coaster. Amusement park.
I was just having a conversation about Cedar Point with Double Fine employees yesterday.
I got lost there when I was 6, and it was exactly like this.
Yeah.
As my dad, I was like, "Dad, can I go over and look at that thing?" He's like, "Yeah, just go over there." And then I was at the thing, and I went, "Well, what the fuck is that?" And I took like 40 steps one way, and I was lost for like 4 hours.
Yeah.
As a 6-year-old, lost for 4 hours was like
that's
big fucking deal for all parties involved.
Percent of your life.
But it felt exactly like that, and it was in a game system because the moment the sun went down, I went, fuck. Is it worth talking about what happened to me? I almost don't want to talk about it. You know what? But I don't want to talk about it either because it was such a surprise.
Yeah.
Given the
and that's
systems
worthwhile in this game.
It's totally worthwhile.
Yeah, given
one thing that is worth just putting out there is Miasmata basically does every single thing that we constantly say that we wish a video game would do.
Yep.
Yeah,
some of which we haven't talked about yet for spoiler reasons because it's important that you. But I mean, it's just the number of things over the last few years since launching Idle Thumbs in 2008, or since launching the podcast specifically, the number of discussions we've had where we're like, I really like how this game does this. Why isn't this explored more? Or, man, this makes me think, what if a game took this system, but did this crazy thing with it? I mean, this game nails a lot of that.
It's very clearly a game made by two people. Like, if you haven't played it or looked at it, like, it does not. It's like it's not on the scale of like a Far Cry game or something. No. Even though it is a crazy open world
it's
jungle,
systemically more complex, but in some ways,
polish and visual aesthetics. It's got a lot of crustiness going on.
Like there are little things that are probably going to frustrate you. Yeah. Like picking up stuff, your inventory mechanic is a little funky.
Yeah.
I got just.
Although you can walk around with a bouquet of flowers.
I got actually like legitimately stuck. I couldn't jump over.
Yeah, that was weird. There's
little things like that. Like there's there's a fit and finish,
right?
A fit and finish that you're used to with a first person game on an island. That
you're given that first person games on islands are in fact the polished benchmark of PC gaming.
Exactly. You know what's so frustrating though about games that broadly fit in this category, and like when I say broadly, I mean really broad. Like I would include Far Cry 2 in this thing, and like games all over the place. But even a game like Crysis, for that matter, just any game that attempts to take a really large location and let the player kind of loosen it, is that the more fit and finish you have, it's very frustrating. And I don't think there's anything that makes this a law of nature, but it does happen to just work this way a lot of the time. Games that do actually have that fit and finish tend to sand away a lot of the things that end up making something like Miasmata really, really fascinating.
Yeah, I was
it's
just going to say
really, really hard to make, and I don't think impossible. I think someone absolutely could do it, but it's almost unheard of for a game to. And I think that's honestly one of the reasons we find Far Cry 2 so fascinating, for all of its numerous flaws. Is it seems like a better marriage of those two things than most games. It's not nearly as uncompromising as Miasmata in certain ways, but way more so than any game that's polished in that specific way to that degree.
Right. It's just I can imagine it being tough going from the traversal in Far Cry 3 is. I mean, it doesn't have the uphill downhill sort of stuff that you have in Miasmata. Although when you get on hills in Far Cry 3 and you do sort of like slide down, and just the clamoring and just that stuff in Far Cry 3 is really goddamn.
No,
good.
it is really cool.
It's really good. So like it could be a jarring jump to go from that to Miasmata, but deal with it.
Well, what's funny is that movement actually might be one of the areas where it is actually a lot harder to really marry the fit and finish and the uncompromising nature, because so much of what is interesting about Miasmata's movements system is that it doesn't exist just to enable you, whereas in Far Cry 3 it basically does.
Right,
it doesn't mean it's not interesting in Far Cry 3, but like where do you draw the line between jankiness and sort of deliberate non-power?
Where does Miasmata split the line between actually trying to infer your intent and let you express it in the game versus telling you actually you're having a lot of trouble climbing here, your guy's falling, you're trying to get up this hill but you can't, but it kind of feels like you can, but that's not the game saying it's impossible. And
I think there's a certain attitude to game design, and there's something to be said for it, certainly, that enabling the player is synonymous with polish and
I think if you're not there's that idea that if you're not having fun, if you don't feel like a powerful actor in the world, then the game isn't good. Right. And I mean we've obviously taken issue with that a lot on the podcast, but I mean you take that that idea
there's a force that works towards that feels almost irrespective of whether an individual designer feels that way. Like if you're working on a game past a certain size and budget, I feel like there's just natural pressure that exists at the institutional level to move things in that direction, because things like playtesting will just
I also think that it's also worth pointing out that it's a matter of scale to a certain degree. Like in Miasmata, the scale of climbing over a small hill is an important deal. That's the designers. That's like, it's not means to an end, it is the end. Like the act of climbing a hill is important to Miasmata, whereas in Far Cry 3, it is means to an end. You're getting to the next waypoint, you're getting to the next mission, you're getting to the object that you're going to, you're traversing space, you know, like it's so, you know, it's I'm not saying that to discount what you're saying, but I think that it is worth pointing out that it's fair. It would be fair to say that it's a deliberate choice to smooth it out versus not. Like, I mean, I don't know what I don't. Yeah, I'm not arguing with anyone, but I just
no, I know. But I think part of your point of what you're saying, and I think you're right. You're completely right about the scale thing. Is I think part of what's included in that institutionalized push towards that certain kind of game design is the notion of always having a goal, like always having a point B that you know you're trying to get to right now.
Part of Miasmata, which is different than even like Far Cry 2, unless you force yourself to be a person who does this, but part of Miasmata is deliberately just, it is about the journey. It is about the walking.
Yeah.
So I think, one's instinct would be annoyed that walking is hard, but that you just have to then say, well, if you're not enjoying the walking, you probably should not be playing this game.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a really good point. And that actually leads directly into a thing that I was talking about with Nick last night, actually, after we left your guys' apartment, which is that Miasmata, in its dedication to that level of that sort of scale of the experience, that sort of zoomed in scale, where even the idea of walking up a hill is unto itself an experience. That means that, like the playthrough that I had with Nick, not playthrough, but play session, which was, I don't know, 2 hours long maybe.
Yeah.
And then the other one we had with Sean, which was probably another roughly 2 hours. Right? Is that right? Maybe a little more. They were radically different. Like in mine, I was just super captivated by the map triangulation stuff. So all of the good and bad decisions I made kind of flowed out from that. So I was like getting further and further afield. Like Nick and I got super obsessed with like parsing information on the map fragments we would find and like getting to those points and marking landmarks left and right. Like that was just what informed all the things we were doing. Whereas Sean, in your case, you were like making a lot more medicine than we made. You were finding new plant species. Like there were different sort of forces that were the impetus for things we were doing. And so and that, as in a good game, like this is what a good game should do, that had significant impact on the kind of emotional arc of each of our playthroughs. Like the experience of the fictional guy who we're controlling, who's running around this world, was radically different when Nick and I played versus where you played. Like the moments of panic and like the moments of discovery and surprise came at totally different times and usually were the result of totally different things.
Yeah.
And the thing that is fascinating to me about that is that I feel like in each of those cases, in those 2 hour chunks, we each had really fleshed out, full, interesting game arcs that
they were not
stand alone unto
either.
themselves.
Yeah.
Like, well, yeah, one, they weren't assigned, and two, because there wasn't like this omnipresent, here's your next main quest, or like, here's this, like, they were allowed to stand on their own as experiences that someone just had, like this guy had on an island. And that was just a thing unto itself. And like to connect this back to last week's discussion that Jake, you started about, it's hard for me to get more than an hour or two in a game because I feel like nothing. I
was about to start talking about that too.
Yeah, right. Like in this case, well, I'll finish. I'll wrap up into one or two sentences.
I was going to say one very specific thing, but it's okay.
In these two playthroughs, that first hour or two, what was a full, complete, fascinating, interesting experience unto itself, even though we never even penetrated very far into like the critical path or the main story or whatever happens. And I thought that was amazing.
Miasmata does a fantastic job of teaching you about whatever it is that you want to learn in the first hour or two entirely systemically. That was amazing to me. Like this game doesn't have the notion of a waypoint, but right at the edge of the draw distance, you can see a super interesting object. And when you roll over it, the space in the center of the screen turns into an arrow pointing to it with a question mark on it. There's no waypoints in this game. There's no mission objectives, but just seeing an interesting thing in the game, just putting a question mark over it in the UI.
You sort of create your own natural
that immediately just makes you go, I've got to get there.
It's really sophisticated open world design and you don't expect it at all,
like,
really.
You walk into that hut though, and then like that's sort of the beginning of the world navigation system, is seeing that the thing out there in the beginning of sort of world traversal waypoint stuff. But then alternatively, if you walk into the hut, you see the two things that are the combination table and the item investigation table. And if you place anything that you have on the investigation table, like anything you've harvested out in the world, your guy looks up journal information about it, and you learn its properties. And
he sketches it.
He sketches it, and you learn, and that immediately just shows you, maybe you can combine this with another thing to craft something, and then you look right next to it, and there's a crafting table.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't tell you anything, but it tells you everything. It's so... Yeah.
And there's also before any of that, what's funny to me about this is that the beginning of the game is actually incredibly heavy-handed with just straight up text box tutorialization. Like when you can get
that's true.
In the first 10 or 15 minutes, depending on how fast you kind of just slam through the introductory part, which can go really fast, or you could theoretically just ignore it entirely if you wanted to. The game just pops up a lot of just white on black text boxes that just say, this is an observation table, this is a storage bin, like this is this. And it's, on the one hand, it's really unsophisticated and really just kind of in your face and sort of an annoying type of tutorialization. But on the other hand, it's information that, given who this guy is, like he's clearly some kind of botanist or like scientist of some sort.
Or naturalist, yeah.
It's totally, completely, the game felt like it earned the right to just say, look, this is stuff this guy would just know. Just read it once. Now you know. But from this point on.
At the same time, even if you are me and I was sitting far enough back and need glasses enough that I didn't read that stuff, just looking over Sean's shoulder into the scene, I knew he had that plant in his hand. There was a little table there that said investigation table with a scalpel and a microscope next to it. I knew, like, you clicked on it, the guy set the flower down and investigated it, and the journal popped up. Like,
yeah, oh no, for sure.
It was
I just don't want to like
really
gloss over the fact that they do have just straight up text to screen. Like,
I really liked the treatment of it. It was really classic and clean. Yeah. The thing that I have to talk about for a second is the dude himself, who we know nothing about, but who
Robert Hughes.
Yes.
Like, maybe just because I am a person who likes diegetic UI a lot, I'm a person who makes a lot of stupid game UI that's really prop heavy. The story of this guy through the user interface is fascinating. It really is. It's really because good. He is like, you put the plant down, and then, he draws a picture of it. He writes all of its properties perfectly. Like, it's not because all of the UI is in world. Like, this guy carries a 3-ring notebook with him through the entire game, which not only does he use to include all of his research material, but also when you when you use the crafting table and combine the different things together to make yourself aspirin.
By things, you mean flowers.
Yeah, when you combine flowers, it's plants. When you combine plant life together to make medicine. Not only does he fabricate pills which are perfectly round and have the line down the middle of them for making like half dose, I guess, but he also then apparently, because when you open up your journal and see them in your UI,
there's a left pocket.
They're tucked into a left pocket in a little baggie with a rope coming off of it with a cut little angular like druggist label that has the name written on it, which implies to me that this guy off camera, and because it fades in and out a little bit, the crafting sequence is a little bit montagey. It implies to me that this guy's like super medicine, and then like he then goes and finds a little bag and then makes a little bespoke label and twine. Like, he's a very artisanal guy, actually.
No, he's like a fucking hipster with an Etsy account. Oh, Chris, your face.
Oh, no. You're just ruined the game for Chris.
Oh, that's because it's not... The thing that reminds me of is not like a modern hipster. It's the actual version of this guy from like the 1800s.
Right,
who just is that proper about. Like, that's just how he conducts his life.
He exists clearly in modern times based on the equipment that's there. It's I don't read it as a hipster thing. I just read it as like he's making the...
fastidious
like, just with all the stuff that he has there.
I always feel like it's like going to like the farmer's market or going to like the Embarcadero Center and buying a cheese that has a perfect like cardboard wrapper thing on it with like there's a wax stamp.
That's just because in the bullshit place that we happen to live, that's what the touchdown for that.
Sure,
that's not because
the other amazing
nobody did that. Until
in my version of this game, he has an Etsy account.
And this is surely again just because that stuff is because the guys who made the game are clearly just
that's what's great,
detail attentive, obsessive guys, because this is a game that is just like
story.
Everything is the details. So their character, also his UI,
well, the fact that they bothered to make their own engine from scratch, they didn't need to do that clearly. But like that's the kind of guy they are, and I love that the game that results from those guys' imagination and skills is this.
Except
God, we got to get those guys on the podcast.
Yeah, I know.
What would you do? Of course you would just do that. You just bundle up all your medicine and you'd write on it. Come on.
This is all
Set their notebook down on the table.
It would be just so disorganized.
You could imagine someone, a certain type of person in this fictional scenario, just
pocket full of pills,
Well,
just
just
flowers sticking out of their
Right,
head.
grind the stuff down and into like a powder, but you don't need to then formulate a pill out of it.
You're in this fucked up place. Like, the first human you find is clearly very recently killed with a knife sticking out of his back. Like, you're fucked. You just had to, like, you are going to do anything you can to retain as many elements of civilization, like order and cleanliness. You know what I mean?
Food,
Like,
he'd tuck a napkin into his shirt.
that's what I'm
Knife and
imagining. Though.
fork.
You know what I mean? Like, that's my image of this guy.
It's not actually what I feel like when I'm playing the game, but whenever that UI comes up, I can't not just even though you know that, like, obviously, like, that UI, even though it paints a really goofy picture narratively, is incredibly readable. It's really fun, like really cool in the world. Like the page turns are all actually like animated, full, beautiful things. But man, if you for half a second think, what person would make this? It's so weird. Oh, but
I love the water bottle hanging off of.
He's also got a water bottle hanging off his journal. Like
it's really.
He's just I've invented the most. Like,
the whole contraption is hilarious.
Just scientific observational contraption. Like for the enlightened man on the go or whatever.
Exactly.
The one other detail that throws the mental picture of this guy entirely out of whack is probably because, again, this is made by two guys and you never see your own guy. But if you swing the camera too far over, you see that he doesn't have sleeves, and it just makes you think that this guy is naked. Like the two hand models just go.
He's not a naturalist; he's a naturist.
The thing that now I'm picturing in terms of this guy being just like a douchey hipster guy is that he just has like a vest and no shirt, and then he just has the most fucked, stupid beard and mustache and an annoying ass ironic hat. Like this guy's just a fucking shit, apparently. God, just a doucher. But he does know how to make really, like, he's you know, you look at him, you just look at him, you're like, ugh, just fucking lay about hipster. Then someone's like, no, dude, that guy can make his own, like, pharmacy grade medicine.
He's a PhD.
He's got a meticulously curated lab with specimens cataloged.
But when we first noticed those nude arms, it was really like, wait a minute. Why look to the right again?
Circles, just trying to find the flesh boundary.
I don't think our guy's wearing any clothes. I think it's just a naked, like, mud-covered man shivering with disease, mapping things wildly. But he also has a wristwatch.
That's true. A wristwatch and a.
You're not naked if you're wearing a watch.
So when Nick and I were playing, I remember, like, when we were, because I didn't know anything about this game at all, and we were other than, like, I had loaded it up for a couple minutes. And you realize that, you know, it's a PC game, so your primary inputs are keyboard and mouse, obviously, and the WASD is WASD, it moves you around like always. And then on the mouse, left click, like when you first start the game, left click doesn't do anything because it's use item and you have nothing in your hand yet. And then right click is both hands come up, you see a wristwatch on your left hand and a compass in your right hand, and you're like, oh my god, my primary
this is fucking
device,
on.
This is like one of two primary first level inputs is wristwatch and compass in real time in world. This game, this is serious shit that I'm embarking on here. That's like interface design communicating intent in just the most upfront way. And it was.
Although Sean's immediate use for it was to try and use the two hands to shield himself from the sun.
Yeah, right.
No, it was when I saw the body.
You saw the bloody guy.
I brought my hands up. Oh god!
I can't look at this.
I mustn't.
So
I did instantly look to see what time it was and if the sun was rising or setting in the east or west, and then went and tried to figure out where I was,
like what hemisphere you were on. And
I was like, what season is it? Therefore, where is it? And all that stuff lines right up. It was great. I did that like the first minute. It's a good game.
Miasmata, play it. Also,
it's like $15 on Steam. Go buy this game.
Like we said, we're also leaving quite a lot of this game out of this discussion because we don't want to fuck it up for you.
There's a lot of tension in this game that we didn't really
there really
touch
is.
on. I mean,
there is.
It is. Yeah,
it's not just like a happy-go-lucky.
It kind of is.
This game is intense.
This is not. I just forgot.
It's more legit survival horror than 95% of the games that are called that because survival is actually involved in a really tangible way. God, and the horror is legit.
Yeah, it really is.
There's a meets analogy that I really want to make, but I feel like people will declare it disingenuous, but it really it feels like Far Cry 2 meets Minecraft meets Amnesia to me.
Sure.
Like that's fully the three games that I think of when I'm thinking about this.
Meats was. I just thought of steak.
I have no idea what you're going for there.
What I'm saying is Miasmata : meats.
There's
artisanal butchery.
Artisanal meats.
I don't think you ever said explicitly, but I think you were tending to convey, and our readers probably all picked up what you meant, but was the idea of exploring a Minecraft server, like seeing these crazy landmarks in the world.
Like when we did that Saturday stream and we were all lost in the jungle, then suddenly someone's like, by the way, you're standing on the arm of a giant statue that's like covered in moss, and you turned around and this huge face was behind you. We're like, whoa!
Yeah.
That plus, I mean, also the way that world exploration and crafting works in this feels closer to Minecraft to me than a lot of other things. The way that you uncover the map and the way that the really sort of passive but very survival essential crafting. Yeah. Anyway, I don't know. Games.
This is a cool game.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say passive but deadly.
That's true. We should take a break now.
Let's take a break.
Yeah, I just released a passive but deadly. Open the door.
That's edited out.
Video games.
It's January 16th, 2013.
And it's 2013.
That was last week.
It was last week. It's Dishonored New Year's. Those jokes are over.
Dishonored
NYE.
NYE.
It's Dishonored Black History Month. There's no black people in Dishonored. I'm just kidding. Yeah.
Oh my god.
Nick self-immolates and smashes out of the window.
Video games.
So for the second week in a row, hover.com/wizard has been kind enough to sponsor our podcast.
So thanks. Yeah. I actually made a Hover account and moved my domains, and I don't know.
Where did you go to do that?
Hover.com/wizard, please.
Yeah, where else?
Please. That's the only place that does it on the internet. That's the only way you can do it.
the only domain register.
But yeah, I mean, last week I didn't we said, register your domains there, but transferring them was super duper easy and saved me like $10 a year or $20 a year, and it was great. It's awesome. I really like it a lot. It sounds like there's a gun on my back. Because I don't know.
You looked over your shoulder when you said it.
I don't know how to advertise things.
The experience that you had was apparently good enough that when we were at lunch the day that you did it, you were just like, oh man, I totally moved my domains. You should move your domains. Who are you using? Oh, yeah, GoDaddy? Oh, yeah, Duster? It's just, you just press a button, it does it. It just gives you a code and it just moves it over. Why haven't you done it yet? It's like, we're eating lunch. It was ridiculous.
The guy with the gun is still behind Sean.
Sean's like,
who's that guy in the backseat?
I did say that.
It's nobody. It's no one important at all. Hover.com/wizard. Go there now.
But yeah, the best thing about last week's hover.com/wizard sponsorship is that we apparently did inspire some readers to make some switches, such as notable domain it will blow you away IGN.com, which redirects to idlethumbs.net, was registered at hover.com/wizard, or was transferred there. That was good. So it will blow you away IGN.com. Venuspatrol.com, the mistype like domain squatting domain, was also registered by our reader.
VNISpatrol.
Hover.com/wizard also provides you micro beefs with Brendan Boyer for 5 seconds.
Yeah, you should go to VNISpatrol.com if you haven't seen it. Jake kindly donated a new
What reader was that? Joel
McCoy.
Yeah, Joel McCoy. Thanks, Joel McCoy. That's
It's got
quality.
It's got a good website on it right now.
Yeah, we put something together for that because it was too funny to me.
There's also the potential that reader Wikipedia Brown may be redirecting wieners.xxx that may be being transferred with hover.com/wizard.
Yeah.
Which is
we heard promise on the forum.
It's going to be a big get for us.
Whispers in the air. About
he wasn't sure. He wasn't sure whether or not he should even
XXX.
keep the domain, but I think we all know, including you, dear readers, that we cannot let wieners.xxx fall into the wrong hands. So, please
encourage
Wikipedia Brown on the idle forums
to use hover.com/wizard to transfer wieners.xxx into their control.
I hope nobody from Hover listens to this.
I think that they
it's
might.
part of their contract that they will.
That's not good.
It's whatever. It's a great service, and people have been using it for really helpful stuff.
You can register .xxx domains on hover.com/wizard.
That's true. So I guess they know.
Yeah,
they know this. They know wieners.
The fine folks at Two Cows are not without a sense of humor, Chris.
We did discover that they don't have a deal with the Christmas Islands, so we couldn't move Godi.cx over to them. But wieners.xxx is supported, fortunately. So Also regular domain names.
Goaty.xxx is also not a bad alternative.
We have to register that before this podcast goes live.
That's true. Otherwise, yeah.
We can use
Otherwise
my
it's
Hover
gone.
account.
Oh, man.
It is just super nice. Like, it is like a really clean dashboard. It's like, it looks like it has modern graphic design, like a website of today, and not like every other horrible.
No, it's
domain
just nice you go there and it just
looks
doesn't make you
shitty.
stress out by looking at it.
Yeah.
But I was mostly pleased that Sean was able to do legitimate use of it, and then our readers were able to just do horrible things.
To do illegitimate
So
use of it.
yes, it supports all user types apparently, all use cases.
I don't know. If I had a bunch of domains, like it feels like really good for that. Like it feels like that would stress me out on another website.
We have no idea if Hover is going to sponsor us ever again after this. But if they do, sometime in the future, we'll round up a list of domains that readers have transferred using hover.com/wizard, transferred or registered for that matter.
Yeah. So if you have anything that needs to be read on this podcast, let us know.
Yeah.
And
No guarantees that this will ever happen again because I wouldn't bet on it.
On that
after
note,
this,
though,
but
it's worth saying if you are planning on registering a domain in the next week or so, or if you've got domain names that you have and like and want a really good interface for them and want to support Idle Thumbs, please do your
is the time to
business
do it.
through
Yeah.
hover.com/wizard. We would really appreciate the hell out of it, as I'm sure would also.
And I'm sure that link will
Two
work for a while.
Cows, makers of your favorite download mirrors
oh
from
wait,
the
are you
early
talking
90s.
about the ultimate collection of Windsock software?
Yes.
Oh, I love that website.
Yeah. So yeah, hover.com/wizard.
Yeah.
Good guys, especially at that URL only.
Yeah. Hover.com/bombcast or whatever. That's
No,
like
don't.
Video game.
Is it reader mail time?
No, we're
it's
back.
Tropico.
It's
Yeah,
we're
tropical.
back.
It's
It's
tropico.
the Tropical 4.
Yeah.
Tropical 10
Heist
minutes.
caper.
Are we really? We're talking about Tropico now.
We're
Yeah.
back.
Okay.
We're
Well,
back
we are
right now.
we are the Tropical 4.
And Nick, you are a leader.
Yeah.
Let's start with the talk
You're a
of
swab.
Tropico 4.
Yeah.
Man in charge.
Yeah. I've been playing a lot of Tropico 4.
Boss Tropic.
Did you play
pretty good.
Tropico 3?
I did not. I played the original Tropico.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
But I honestly couldn't remember anything about it when I started playing 4.
Yeah.
So it was sort of fresh. Yeah, there are a few things I'll say about Tropico 4. It's really polished. Like, this is a fantastic game, and I didn't expect that at all. Actually, I guess I don't know why. Just city building game, probably just gonna wait for SimCity 4, and anything that's kind of coalescing around it is just gonna be by
SimCity
definition.
5, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. But no, this game has curved roads and like an amazing zoom function, and it's beautiful, and it has a great soundtrack, and it's a fucking
it's funny.
The soundtrack in 3 was
I
amazing.
remember,
Yeah,
I remember
it's-
thinking that about Tropico 3 when Chris was playing it, because my impression of the early Tropicos, having never played them, was always like this is the B grade, sort of like the bargain
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
Because it always had like cheesy cigar chomping fake Castro on the box and
Exactly.
stuff. It always looked like the wacky cousin.
Well,
like
2 was
yeah,
like a
it's the-
pirate thing, right? It was like a,
Yeah, I don't even know.
Oh, weird.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, probably.
Probably had a pirate on it.
Yeah. But yeah, it's really polished. And then the other thing I'll say about it is that it's I mean, and this is something that obviously, I didn't play 3 and I heard it was great.
It was really cool.
So,
I liked it a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I could be repeating something that you've already talked about, but
Whatever, that was years
I mean,
ago.
it's really interesting because it takes the SimCity concept and wraps it in something that is actually like interesting from just a historical perspective. Like it
It gives it specificity.
It gives it a specificity
yeah,
that just
SimCity is
feels
deliberately generic.
Yeah. I mean, this is a simulation of a banana republic in
Yeah.
the 1950s, and the things that you end up doing in this game are things that they're systems and that actually exist.
Yeah,
like
there's precedent.
it's a goofy facade. Like it's superficially the game is goofy as all hell.
That's a weird tonal thing about it.
Right, and so you get sucked into it just because I'm making my Presidente and my little avatar, and like there's goofy music, and you just there are quests like imprison this grandma because she hates your regime, and you just you're sort of
There's a weird tonal.
It's this-
I appreciate that though.
I mean it's super goofy, but then you catch yourself later realizing that it's
Somebody's grandma.
well, yeah, it's somebody's grandma, but also just you're basically you get halfway through a round of this and realize you're building up this shanty town to support the mining operation that is in essence supporting the tourism business that is on the other side of the island, completely hidden from your shanty town, where all these poor people are just rooting around in like their awful. I mean, it's like. You've created
that's what's amazing about
this representation of an actual banana republic, and it's like there's a subtle moment where you realize, oh my god, like this is actually
what have
working.
I become?
Yeah, what I am basically Castro. Like it's amazing. It's really good. Yeah, that's all. I'll say
Can everybody on your island read?
Cuba's
literacy rate is uncontrollably great. It's fucking amazing. It's like
Education
literacy.
is actually one of the major components, and like every building that you build requires a certain amount of educated workers, and certain ones, like a mine requires no education, and a hotel requires high school education, and et cetera, et cetera. It actually takes it to an absurd degree. I mean, you can like by the end of my current island, I have, the end goal of every game is to build up a large enough tourism business so that you basically have sustainable wealth, because otherwise you're going to run out of natural resources. So, I've got this crazy beach resort, but then I've got all this left over. I've got like $2 million in the bank. And so I just made a space program.
Also, the space program that costs $2 million.
Yeah, it's hilarious to see a space shuttle with like a Cuban flag on the side, just like, there's a volcano in the background just exploding, and like
the space shuttle comes out of the volcano.
Yeah, it did. It was amazing. There was this incredible moment where a volcano was destroying like half of the shanty town while a space shuttle was rocketing off into space, and people were on the beach just like, what's going on?
That right there. There's your just built-in symbol for the dichotomy you were describing earlier.
Yeah, so you won at that exact moment.
I beat Tropico 4 at that moment.
The space shuttle exploded.
Becoming incinerated by the jet exhaust of your Presidente in the background. Just
You're just boiling alive in the water.
In the cone of the space shuttle.
Well, he's actually just
blasting off.
He has his back turned to the plight of all the people with his sunglasses on, and in the reflection of the sunglasses is the space shuttle launching.
Right.
But I mean, one thing I will say also is that it's interesting how tenuous your city is in comparison to something like SimCity 4, where you can usually dig your way out of a mishap in that game in SimCity. You can get a loan or something. In this game, if you build up the wrong combination, like if you go for like a mining economy and you run out of things to mine, you can just be completely screwed. I mean, like if one thread of your little urban center is destroyed by a tsunami, you're basically done. Like you can't dig your way out of it.
It's also another tragic thing, like comparing the sort of developed world that SimCity represents versus the kind of developing country that or sort of third world country in some cases that this represents. Like when you look at the difference between major natural disasters in the United States or other developed countries versus like Haiti or whatever, like it's really tragic that the exact same an event of similar magnitude can have such grossly divergent results.
Yeah.
For years to come.
It's nice that it focuses so much on like the islandness nature of what that means, and it sounds really great.
Yeah, there are fantastic things that happen just systemically. Like you'll build a hotel, and because there aren't there isn't any low-income housing nearby, just shanty like huts will start springing out of the ground. They'll just automatically build just so that people can live and work near that area because they have no other place to there's no you're not providing them transportation from the from the town center. There's just a lot of great stuff in there that's just it's subtle, but once you get past the sort of goofy facade of it, it's fascinating. It's really well done. Yeah.
I mean, they probably felt.
I want to play the game now.
Yeah. I mean, that goofy nature has been, it's not new to this game, obviously. It's been part of that series before. But I would imagine that it felt like that was almost necessary to keep this from just being an incredibly dismal
that's probably
experience
true.
That you just wouldn't really want to stay with. It's like Real Lives 2010 or something, like makes no effort to do that, but it's a little different because in Real Lives, you're kind of just getting carried along. Like you're making choices and they have an impact. But in Tropico, every single little like fulcrum point is down to you, like balancing this thing.
If Tropico was actually just garbage blowing around and gunfire going off, you would not want to play that game anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is, Real Lives isn't it's not really an entertainment
exactly
product.
Right. That's one of the things that divides them is that Tropico is explicitly a commercial entertainment exercise.
But
But it's interesting that
it's a huge point in its credit, though, that
Exactly.
that veneer brings you in, and then you just sort of get punched in the gut.
Yep.
If you,
Yep, it's really well done. So yeah, short, sweet.
I should give it a
think
shot.
you
I mean, I
should
like
play- you should
Tropico
play
3 a lot,
Tropico 4.
so why
Yeah.
not?
Oh man, yeah, definitely.
does it have procedural god rays like Tropico 3?
That stuff was so beautiful. in
It
that
actually
game.
does look like the engine is amazing.
It's
And
really
you can
beautiful,
zoom
yeah.
all the way to the point where you're actually clipping through the ground. But I love that they allow you to do that because I was just I had the thought like Dead End Thrills should be doing screenshots for this game because it looks amazing.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
It's a weird property of that class of game that some of them are actually the most secretly beautiful games around. Anno games are the same.
Yeah,
way.
that's what I was going
Anno
to say.
games are unbelievably.
I remember there was
gorgeous.
a time when you were playing whatever the Anno was before 27.
1404.
Yeah, when you were playing Anno 1404, and then right around the same time you were playing Tropico. So I kept
Yeah.
coming over to your house to record and just going, "Holy shit!" Like your
Yeah.
computer was just displaying
Yeah.
the most beautiful,
Incredibly gorgeous.
vaguely isometric inspired 3D worlds.
But
for many weeks.
They have free
Yeah.
third-person cameras, so you can go and get the angle through a tree, or
Yeah.
right above
it's
the
so
water.
good.
I mean, just oh my god! And it's a shame because the way that sort of the game press and just kind of the world of PR and like Game Awards and stuff is set up. Games like that never ever end up getting nominated or winning like visual arts awards, and it's a real shame because they represent they set out to represent a totally different kind of beauty than games that tend to win those awards win. And I feel like it's just an unfortunate matter of circumstance that the group of people who tends to be responsible for handing out awards like that is largely just unaware of that entire category of game, or at least not enough of them are aware to ever make games like that a player in those discussions. And it's a shame because they represent things that reflect parts of beauty in the actual world in which we live in a really unique, really video game specific way. And I wish that those games were able to get more credit for that on a regular basis. Because I just, when you look at games like Anno and Tropico, that's a kind of beauty that you just don't see reflected in most games.
Yeah. Well, and even just like in Tropico, just zooming into a city street and there's a school with graffiti on the side of the wall, and it looks amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, just that level of detail for a game like this is completely unnecessary, but the fact that they did it, just I don't know, it does add something to it.
Oh, absolutely, it does.
Yeah. So Tropico's really good.
Yep.
Do you guys want to do some reader mail?
Yeah. Let's do some reader mail. From you, the readers. We haven't said that in a while.
I was about to say it too. Nick being back, maybe want to say it's
man,
mail
here.
from you, the readers.
We're going to do some reader mail this week.
Oh, it's mail from you, the readers.
There you go.
Nick Breckon.
Yeah.
So Sean Thompson writes, here's a question. How discriminate are you when buying video games now? I ask because you've experienced what I have, a game fatigue. But in 2012, I played more games than I have in years and loved it. One of the things I've done is completely change how I buy video games. I don't purchase any game, no matter how cheap, unless I actually intend to play it right now. Sorry, Steam sales. I've done my best to be as discriminate as possible, including dropping almost all games that have had too many sequels without significant change, like Assassin's Creed and Halo. It's been amazing, and even though I've missed out on popular games like Assassin's Creed 3, COD Blops 2, I don't regret it. It's almost like in retrospect, the AAA games have become like kids' shows or something on TV. The same game mechanics are sold over and over, but I've seen those mechanics, and I want new stuff. But fortunately, new stuff is out there, and I'm having a great time. That's Sean Thompson. I think that's really smart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't prescribe. I don't have the same rule of I'm not going to buy this because I'm not going to play it right this second, just because Steam sales are way too.
Otherwise, they'll just ruin you. Yeah.
Yeah. But no, I mean, I don't know. It's fun to buy games. I mean, it's fun to go shopping for a new game when you're ready to play one. Like something I do is like if I get if somebody gives me like a gift card or like my credit card, the only one that I use. Has a cashback system that is they send you $25 gift cards whenever you're due for one.
Yeah.
So those just become Steam wallet dollars always. Like because I don't want to go buy something for $23 and have $1 on there and waste it.
Yeah.
So I'm like, 20 and 5, boom, Steam wallet. So it's almost like having a Steam credit card that's earning me points, if that makes sense. So that's just how I've been buying games all year.
Funny,
I don't know. But is it weird actually for you guys, especially going from being ex journalists who always got to play every game and have access to every game? What's your behavior like?
Do you guys still have access? Do you still have Steam journalist access?
I still buy I still
You buy a lot of
operate
games.
more like Jake, I guess, where I buy a lot of games. But I mean, I've been trying to be more discriminate in the way this guy describes as well.
Yeah, same. Like my 2011 to 2012, there's been a steep drop off for me in the number of games that I buy, but I still have acquired way more games than I've played this year.
Yeah.
Bad. In that I've bought games. let's just be honest here.
Fuck. Well, the way you buy games always. I mean, this might be giving you more credit than
always
you should
seems
have.
stupid.
No, but it always kind of feels like you're like more of a patron of the industry.
Yeah, well, that's
it's
how
like, I want to support this game, so I'm purchasing it.
That's and that's the tough thing that's hard to reconcile with this, because that's how I am with everything, not just games. But like, what?
Oh no.
Well, shut up.
Well, I disagree.
Garbage.
Like that's generally just
stole that
how I
dinner
try to spend my money. Just I'll go out of my way to go see something in the theater if it's the kind of film I want to support. Like I'll pay. Like I don't pay for cable service. Like I don't pay for a lot of sort of things like that. But the flip side of it is I go out of my way to all the things that I actually am going to watch or play. I buy them and I make sure I try when possible to do it like when the thing is relatively new or like whatever. And sometimes that results in me having delayed or in some cases just never experiencing the thing. Although I try to not have that be the case. But it's hard. It can be hard to reconcile those two modes of operation for that reason. So I don't know. But I do think it is a good way to be, the way the guy describes is, don't just indiscriminately buy shit left and right.
Yeah.
I feel less guilty about it when it's a digital game because I don't feel like I'm buying this box.
No, you're not cluttering up your home.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, I hate having stuff.
Yeah.
Cool. Good question, Sean. Thanks for listening.
Also, speaking of digital clutter, Damian Harris writes about Steam fruitcake gifts. He says, I was listening to the cast and I was amused by your description of the Steam fruitcake gift, the ship. My buds in the platformers community have a similar Steam fruitcake by the name of Bad Rats. Unlike the ship, Bad Rats is amazingly terrible and barely playable game involving rats killing cats through Rube Goldberg-style puzzles. It is absolutely terrible in every respect. Thanks to the most recent Steam sale, everyone in our community has been cursed with ownership of this game, so we're looking for a replacement fruitcake. We'll keep you posted if we find one. Keep up the good work, that dude over there. Then we got another email.
That's a quality email. Thanks, Damien.
From Chris Gwynn, entitled Fruitcake of Steam. He says, I was excited to hear you wonder what the fruitcake of Steam was. I know where they're going with this, I thought, and I was wrong. The ship is the orange or the toothbrush of Steam, something given out in vast quantities but that the recipient might actually want. No, the fruitcake of Steam is Secret of the Magic Crystal. Artery Studios has sold tens of thousands of copies from gag Steam purchases. See Julian Murdoch's article on the phenomenon, or see Artery trying to convince people to buy it in bulk as a gag gift.
Oh God, so they the roomed it.
Mm-hmm. It is not good. Even my 5-year-old daughter got bored. Chris Gwynn, and reading the thing by the Artery developer is the most. I read it. I followed the guy's link. It is bad. It is straight up a blog post from the developer being like, it's totally hilarious. Just buy our game. They have links to it that are like, buy 12 games, buy 12 copies at once for only $12.95.
Oh my gosh.
Or whatever. And it's really, really, it makes you just cringe. And he's like, they've set it up. They have a blog post on their site that sets this up like a faux Kickstarter, where they're like, if you buy 12 copies of Secret of the Magic Crystals, or whatever it's called now, you'll get 5 copies of the sequel if we raise enough money to make that through these. Like, they're trying to set up a pyramid scheme where people just buy infinite copies of this shitty game so they can make sequels to it. It's very weird. It's really
we're probably helping them right now.
Yeah, I guess we are. Buy the ship instead if you want to buy a thing to give people. But they might actually like it. Yeah. Well, they probably will because it's really good. And on that note,
speaking of buy the ship instead,
because of the discussion,
do you have the email?
We have had a windfall, readers.
Yeah.
If the ship is the currency of the Steam economy, like the shadow currency, we are now fucking lords
flush.
of its underworld. Yeah.
We're flush.
So, okay.
Pedal Thumbs is too big to fail.
We've become the Fannie and Freddie of the underground Steam economy.
Okay. So we were contacted. So a number of the people who actually worked on the ship, I guess they're out of Scotland, heard our podcast.
Hi, guys. Thanks for listening.
We're really pleased that we talked about their game. I'm glad they were pleased and not offended that we described their game as the fruitcake of Steam. But We did actually.
We described it as the rare fruitcake that is delicious.
That's
though.
true.
Yeah.
So Phil Harris from I don't know if they're still called Outer Light or what. They were called Outer Light when they made the ship. I don't know if they still are. But he wrote us and offered to give us a bunch of Steam keys to the ship to help just propagate this weird microbe sort of meme thing. And he says, here are 300 keys for the ship. As you said in the podcast, that 300 keys is worth Far Cry 3. I think Peter, our managing director, is hoping you'll honor that. However, I appreciate that giving you so many keys may devalue the economy, especially since each key unlocks 5 copies of the game. Have fun. So that's fantastic. So we basically have 1,500 copies of the ship to seed out into the world.
Yeah.
And we have no idea how we're going to give these all away.
We now want to issue the ship or the Steam economy spread the wealth challenge, I guess. What the fuck should we do with 300 Steam gift codes for the ship? Please help us. If you have ideas for what we should do,
write us in at
questions@idlethumbs.net. We've got a few ideas for what the heck to do with these, but
they're complicated.
Also, they're very complicated.
One idea is we will play the game. So maybe we should all get on.
Yeah, we should set up some.
Yeah,
some
we want to set up a stream or two of the ship,
or just some times
games,
that readers can get
just,
on and play.
Yeah.
Like even if it's not super organized, but just some times we declare to be when Idle Thumbs readers are going to go and play.
Yeah. Maybe follow us on Twitter if you're not doing that, and we'll put
It's
it up
also
on there.
worth. We never mention this, but it's on the Idle Thumbs website. If you go to idlethumbs.net/idlethumbs, we have a Steam community which hasn't been active lately. But if you guys just amongst yourselves want to start up some ship games, please just sign up to the Idle Thumbs Steam community and send one of us a message, and we can give you admin rights for a while to post some ship games. We'll also try and do that. Yeah, put some stuff on the calendar. We'll also try to maybe put some ship stuff together, because us talking about the ship as the fruitcake of Steam last week made a surprising number of people write us saying, "Oh, when are you guys going to play the ship? We want to."
Yeah, we also discovered that not everybody actually owns this fruitcake. So
we have the ability to remedy that now.
So we only have 300 codes ourselves, but as we said, each of those is 5 copies. So after we see these, the community can then further.
Remember when thinking about what to do with these? Each of these, the ship codes, is basically a cluster bomb we give to one person who then spreads out to 5 people.
Yeah.
God, the best thing would be if each of those 5 then gave them 4 other people. Like if this just became the outbreak map across the globe.
Fractal ship.
Yeah, that probably isn't how it works.
It's probably not.
It's probably for the best.
Yeah. So anyway, that's a weird thing that happened since last week.
Thanks for that, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
What's the name of the developer again?
I don't know what they're called now. They were called Outer Light, but the guy's email comes from Blazing Griffin. So I think they might have reformed under a different name. I'm not sure.
Well, thanks a lot, guys. That's awesome.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, Blazing Griffin is what they're called now.
Cool.
BlazingGriffin.com. Okay.
/wizard.
So Alistair Clark, we read his email last week about turning off the UI in Far Cry 3, and he followed up again with a list of specific things that he's noticed in that game as a result of no UI. And it's just a list, but I kind of want to read it because it's really fascinating. And I think it's kind of an illustrated example of what we were talking about, what happens when you kind of over-polish your game is you kind of obfuscate some of the things in the simulation that are actually cool. And he says, thanks for reading my email on the podcast this week. I'm teaching in a small town in Japan, so it's nice to keep up to date with discussions about game and game design, especially for PC, since it doesn't have much of a presence here. As a follow-up to last email, here are a few of the things I've started to notice or do in Far Cry 3 as a result of no UI. Using black smoke trails to locate pirate-controlled outposts. Using towers as actual viewpoints to plan a route, and in most cases not unjamming them so I'm not tempted to cheat with the map. Noticing environmental patterns where certain plant types grow. Mentally marking places that have a large amount of those plant types. Figuring out
I have a game you should play.
Yeah, I know. Figuring out where stashes are likely to be based on notable landmarks. Identifying wildlife from a distance by specific barks. Identifying enemy types by clothes and behavior. Finding random patrols when they give themselves away by doing things like target practice, leading hostages, or getting into fights. Planning attacks more carefully and firing in controlled bursts because I have no idea how many bullets I still have. So, and just finally, generally soaking in the surroundings. It really is a beautiful game now that I actually stopped to look at it instead of chasing waypoints. And he finishes by saying, as a final thing, I keep thinking what a shame it is that the map is such an abstraction in Far Cry 3. I know it's easier said than done, but having a basic Far Cry 2 map you could hold and then overlay with one of the various overhead projector-style stencils for animal, plant, or stash locations would have made me giddy. Thanks again for reading Alsdare. So I thought that was a cool email.
That's cool. I mean, it's frustrating in that it seems like he's going very heavily out of his way to make Far Cry 3 enjoyable for himself instead of the game facilitating that. But that is really cool.
Yeah.
Also, man, play Miasmata.
Yeah. But it's the other cool thing that, in addition to that, is just that the developers did.
There's all that stuff in the game, right?
Things,
yeah,
you know?
it's got to be really frustrating, probably.
Actively force yourself as a player, though, to filter it down to just those pieces of the experience.
Right.
Yeah.
That is a cool thing, though.
Let's see. Larry LeBron. I don't know what you guys are going to have to say about this, but it's addressed to mainly, I think, Jake and Sean. He says, "Hi, Thumbs. As I understand it, contemporary branching narrative games such as The Walking Dead require authors and designers to hand author content for all possible branches. They must then track the game state to ensure the narrative moves down to the appropriate branch. This approach can create great experiences, but clearly leads to an exponential blow-up in terms of authoring. Do you guys have any thoughts on how we can create systems-driven narrative where the computational systems of the serious software dynamically craft the narrative? I know there's been some work at academia, i.e. façade, but so little has been made outside of that bubble. Jake and Sean, how would you feel authoring for that kind of system versus one where you have more direct control? This shift would be analogous from moving from paper pong. I don't know what that is, but he has a link to paperconsole.com/paperpong.html.
Give your chance to answer.
To the systems-based version of Pong as we know it. Glad the thumbs are back, Larry. P.S. Need a programmer. Need a programmer, ? He says.
I have very strong thoughts on this.
Go ahead then.
I have no idea or experience to explain or express how that could be remotely possible.
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree. Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah.
I mean, the difference to me between the fully one-off specific stuff that a game like The Walking Dead or a traditional adventure game or a choose your own adventure book has versus a game that tries to procedurally not only assemble but procedurally craft or create narrative content even out of tiny pre-existing beats like Façade does. It's so outside of the realm of what I ever think about. Like there's a really hard divide in my brain between games that don't really care about it or that kind of lightly brush it on like most games do, or a game that's explicitly about it. And whenever I think about how to procedurally do it, my brain just falls apart personally.
Yeah, same. And I mean, on a consumer level, I don't really respond very well to games that try to systemize hyper-specific explicit narrative.
Yeah, I agree.
I think the less it can be specific in its sort of milieu and like setting in place and the things are actually in the world. But the moment it tries to like have a person come talk to you,
synthesizing human speech or even like a narrative construct, you know,
and that's a real tough thing. I mean, you and I were talking about that in respects to Steve's game Gone Home, and also just sort of a lot of the explicit narrative games in the IGF this year. 30 Flights of Living, obviously, as well, where it just says, you know what, let's completely desystemize the game and just focus on the story and let that be okay. And maybe that's fine.
That's one of the reasons Cart Life is so incredibly fascinating to me.
Right.
Is because it picks those battles really, really smartly. I mean, it takes a very heavily authored narrative and very cleverly situates it inside an actual game system in a way that doesn't feel at odds with itself.
No, I think Cart Life might be able to answer this in its existence, answer this question about where those things can cross over really cleanly pretty well.
I think Cart Life does a good job of it because it's the specific thing that it chose to be about. And that's a thing that I think people often don't or often leave out when they talk about this, where just imagine a game that did this. Okay, fine. But the way that you imagine a game that's a narrative and a mechanical thing that works harmoniously is imagine a shopkeeping simulation and then imagine that being cut as a montage with the life of the shopkeeper whose life is being affected by the balance sheet that you're manipulating in the simulator. Like that story can't be about everything. It can almost be about, it's about next to nothing. There's like, what, it can be about a shopkeeper and the effects that your simulation is having on his life. Like that,
you could change the specificity of the
like maybe it's about a stockbroker,
right? But it's still an economic system that's going to have the same sort of principles at its core.
Yeah,
and I agree with that completely. I think there's sort of I get really always kind of like dodgy around. Oh, we can make a game out of anything, and I don't really think that's true necessarily. So I do think there's sort of a really intelligent selection at the beginning. It's true
if you're willing to scale back. System, you know what I mean? Like, you guys could have made a game like The Walking Dead about an even less gamier thing than a zombie attack, right? And it's
Right.
it could,
Well, I mean, early on there was a push to make some of the relationship management stuff really, really systems driven. Like, having this sort of like very classic RPG slider of, this guy likes you X amount, and if you push him and make 3 more choices this way, his mood's going to change, and therefore blah 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 blah.
Tiny
blah,
bits
blah.
of that code are still in the game. And
Yeah, and also, I mean, we also sort of, but we also like do that in a couple really like hand chosen spots. But I mean, the type of game we make, is just an insane amount of work.
I think
Every single thing that's coming out of the screen was made by a person and not a computer. So that's really, really, really challenging from a production side. I don't know how you could make. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's hard to make. Like, how do you make the game cheaper when that's the case? Or something
I think
like that, you know?
when you're talking about stories, a story is, unless you want to get really weirdly modern or postmodern about it, I guess a story is about something. A story. Tell me a story. You're expecting to be told something. So I think you either need that. Who is in charge of that collaboration either needs to be the game designer or the player. And when you start trying to split the difference and when you start trying to split the difference and have the game mechanically trying to generate authored feeling content that a player is then uncovering, I think you end up in a really insane place that doesn't actually exist in what a story has ever been before. Like either the player is the storyteller or the game designer is the storyteller, and one or the other is being enraptured by the telling of it from the other person.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I question that a little bit.
Yeah, me too.
Because I feel like it is a collaboration, but the thing that isn't the storyteller is an AI.
I'm talking about in terms of what it's about. What is this game like? No? Yes?
I kind of disagree with you. I mean, I think what The Walking Dead is about for players is a little different than what it's about for us, even though we explicitly authored it to be about one thing. I think there's enough room in sort of the choice-based system, which is a very, very rudimentary system, to allow players to craft a lot of their own meaning. And I think a lot of good games do that.
Okay, that's fair.
Well, I think, and there are also cases where the further you get from a narrative that is primarily constructed out of dialogue and human beings interacting with each other, because a story doesn't need to involve that, and the further a story gets away from that, the more you can have that middle ground, right? Like something like Miasmata is both very highly designed, but also only manifests by way of just like the narrative part is very heavily manifested by the player just doing
stuff,
things.
yeah.
And
Right.
And like,
But I mean, to your point, I think, The Walking Dead is about Lee and Clementine. So that stuff isn't being generated.
of course,
The story a player tells someone else of their playthrough of Miasmata is not going to be about the explicit content, and that break is really clean. The story that a player tells...
You're talking about the moment to moment.
When a player is just literally telling someone, like, this is what happened in my Walking Dead playthrough, this is what happened when I was playing Heavy Rain or whatever. They're literally just barfing back...
Yeah, the events of the
events. The thing is, I think we were smart. I think we were smart in. I mean, not to give ourselves. I don't want to like sit here and like. What did we say? Puff up my buddies? Was that? Puff up my buddies. Like, I don't want to like. I'll be gentle here, but and quick and gentle. But I think we made some choices that allowed some flexibility in what people told their friends about their playthrough. Like, I bet that guy totally doesn't trust me right now. I bet the thing's going to come back on me. I bet. I totally
that's true.
This guy's never gonna.
There are suppositions. There are personal interpretations of the way things mean,
and those are creative choices, I think, as opposed to technical choices, probably.
I don't know.
I guess. I mean, it boils down.
Maybe I tried to draw way too hard of a line there. I guess. Sorry.
Well, there are also the thing that's weird about this is that there are. I mean, something like The Walking Dead, just on the most fundamental level, does communicate its story really different than some other games do. Like that's one of the things that I think. I remember maybe a month ago, I said one of the things that was a big theme for me in 2012 was becoming really comfortable, more so than I have been in the past, with the idea of games like The Walking Dead or 30 Flights of Loving or like Steve's upcoming game Gone Home. I became a lot more comfortable with the notion of if you're just deciding that your game is going to be about a fairly prescriptive authored story, then just saying it's okay to abandon a lot of the gamier parts of it, because otherwise the experience is just going to be very fragile or, maybe like laborious. Like I think
or
that
the other way around,
okay.
Right? I mean, you could look at Far Cry 3 and say the other way around.
Yeah, no, for sure. But I think it's okay to let those two different approaches become separate and not not focus on the holy grail of like how do you synthesize right like if you want to do the cart life thing
still
that's
pisses me off when they do it really well.
Like, no, I know
I'm like,
but I mean
as
you said though, like cart life is about a specific situation that is good, that can be replicated by game systems pretty cleanly. Or Jake said, and I think if you don't have any interest in telling that kind of story, or maybe if you're not capable of creating that kind of thing, as that's not your strength as a designer or developer or whatever, like I think it's totally fine within the just sort of broad umbrella of video games to just pick and choose and just say, you know what, we're just doing this, like whatever, fuck it. If you can do it well, then why not? Like if you can be convincing and creative. And
what's funny is I actually think your studio right now, Double Fine, is a really good, like, is emblematic of what you just said, because so much of this, like the foundation of that studio, given Tim's background and strengths, is this explicit narrative. You know what? We're just going to do that and strip some of the systems out. Brutal Legend notwithstanding. But then you go out, then the studio has a culture where Amnesia Fortnite can happen, and very systems driven games
you see the most
come out of that.
Well, what's interesting about
Amnesia Fortnite has the split too.
Yeah, it does. It's
which
like
I think is
White
really cool.
Birch in Amnesia Fortnite was authored to an insane degree. Like every single animation and like branching point was human authored by like Dave Gardner.
Yeah, with the exception of just walking a guy around, everything in that is just literally
you're
just more playing through cutscenes.
And then on the other hand, like my team, we made Space Base, which is like you couldn't in 2 weeks at the sort of with the level of art assets we were trying to make, it would be tougher to get further away from that philosophically. And then there were games that are in the like Black Lake is closer a little to the White Birch, but still more in the middle of those. And like Autonomous was more kind of robust than ours in terms of like a world presentation, but still very systemic.
Right.
And then Hack and Slash is a crazy thing that just subverts the entire notion of like. I mean, it was weird it was cool witnessing that from within, because I think Double Fine has a reputation of as as stated, like the notion of get the explicit narrative out, like it's okay if other things suffer from that.
Double Fine feels very like art first, creative content first.
For sure. Yeah. And we're a studio that is heavy on artists, like just the number of artists we have, and like they are very extraordinarily talented, and so their influence can be felt, a lot in the studio. So it was actually kind of surprising, even as a Double Fine employee, to go through Amnesia Fortnite and see just that notion explode, or at least the prescriptive part of that explode. Yeah.
That's a great question.
Yeah. So 2012 has been instructive for me in a lot of ways, like that, and then all the stuff I was talking about earlier with playing your game and Steve's game and Brendan's game, like that. All of those things have been like swirling around.
It just took a
in my
life-changing career event and 3 of your closest friends to make games.
Yeah, no, 2012 has been an interesting year for me in that way, thinking about game structure and narrative and so on. Yeah.
Cool.
Do you want to do one more question, or are we good?
I feel like that was a good one. Let's end on that. That was strong. Strong.
Yep.
Sean liked that question.
I thought it was great. I don't know.
Cool. That was a good question.
Well, thanks,
almost
Nick.
as great as transferring your domains at hover.com/wizard. See you next week.
Almost as great. Not quite. Let's face it.
Nick.
Yeah. Bye.
So glad you were here, man.
Goodbye forever.
We're done.
Oh no, Nick's got to play us out.
Oh yeah, play us out, Nick.
What? Huh?
You brought your saxophone.
Oh yeah.
Almost a boo.
Video game.
I was just imagining my tombstone with my last words like chiseled in. Cover.com. Oh fuck! /wizard. And it's just like somebody's like chiseling into like
chiseled into it's like curved
fucking
into
letters
the
and like
Wizard.
right. Okay.
And we were joined by Nick Breckon.
And he was Nick Breckon.